my thoughts on the sequel trilogy, the marvelous Star Wars sequel trilogy. I bet they were trying to be marvelous. Episode 7, 8, and 9, the sequel trilogy. It's hard to say that with a straight face. It was a bad idea to begin with. It was a tough act to follow. You can't follow. 4, 5, and 6 were masterpieces. You can't just make masterpieces. You can't churn them out like a product that's easy to churn out. Indiana Jones 4. This is a good example. George Lucas and Spielberg, they spent 10 years looking for the perfect screenplay. They weren't willing to settle. The only reason they finally did is because Harrison Ford gave them an ultimatum and said, I got to do it now, I'm too old. So they sped it up and they finally did it, and it still sucked, even though they were carefully waiting. Disney just said, let's just rush and do it. Don't worry about a story. Just throw Harrison Ford and Mark Hamill and Carrie Fisher at the camera, at the audience. Throw them at the audience. And the audience is just going to love it. They're going to think it's a masterpiece. It's that easy, really, to create a great trilogy. Yeah. That'll live on forever. Now, I know they were trying to be marvelous, but Star Wars is not comparable to the Marvel Cinematic Universe, and I guess I have to spell it out, so I'll give 4 reasons, in case there's any Kathleen Kennedys listening and they want some tips, because they need some tips. The MCU, it had no live action series to follow. It was creating a whole new universe, so you didn't have to, it wasn't a sequel to anything. So they were creating their own rules. They didn't need to honor anything, first of all. And they're still honoring the original comic books to a large degree, I'm sure. The MCU characters, as opposed to the Star Wars characters, have independent lives and worlds of their own. The MCU has over 100 developed characters, and each of them has over 100 stories each. Whereas Star Wars had 6 stories because they were disregarding the expanded universe, which was another wise idea. Star Wars had 6 stories, because I include the prequels because I thought they were good. They weren't great, but anyways, regardless, it's not important, irrelevant. And they only had a handful of main characters, right? Like what? Really, like under 10 main characters. Sorry, Lando doesn't cut it. Yoda doesn't cut it. You can't have independent stories about them. They're side characters at best. And even the main characters aren't that developed. They were fully developed already. There's not much more to do, right? Like, I don't think we need a Han Solo prequel. Nobody's asking. Nobody's asking how he became a scoundrel. We know how people become scoundrels. It's more interesting to hear how they... it's more interesting to hear how Anakin became a scoundrel than Han Solo. And Han Solo was still a side character. He wasn't even a main character. Okay. If the sequel trilogy was to work, if the baton was to be passed to new characters, first of all, Han, Luke, and Leia should have been the main characters of this sequel trilogy, with Rey, Finn, and Poe being minor characters. You see, Rey, Finn, and Poe needed to earn the audience's respect. We don't just automatically respect them as Han Solo reincarnated, Luke reincarnated, Leia reincarnated, Lando reincarnated, Darth Sidious reincarnated, Darth Vader reincarnated, the Death Star reincarnated. And maybe Rey, Finn, and Poe would get more time in episode 8 and more time in episode 9 because, yes, the baton is being passed. And then finally, after episode 9, then you could have another trilogy starring Rey, Finn, and Poe. But understand that if you're going to have 7, 8, 9, you have to give enough time to Han, Luke, and Leia because it's kind of their story, all right? It's the end of their story, so give them an ending to their story. Don't just have them be not even side characters. Background support, not even supporting, I don't even know what you call them. Cameos? Yeah. Cameos that just die. It's almost too stupid to believe. Like, You would think somebody's making this up. The truth is stranger. The fiction. The fiction. Okay. Right. Okay. So, if they planned, if they did plan to have episode 29, down the road, 29 years from now, they should have had an idea of a long storyline that would connect the whole thing together. Just an idea. But instead, they gave us, again, reincarnated Luke, reincarnated Death Star, reincarnated Darth Sidious, reincarnated Darth Vader, reincarnated everything. Reincarnated Tatooine. That can't be done 29 times. It can't even be done 3 more times. I mean, episode 7 was a travesty as far as I was concerned. It blew my mind that people were... The wool was pulled over everyone's eyes. The Emperor had no clothes. And people just thought it was a good movie. It was an awful movie. I saw it before. Now, okay, the universe, the Star Wars universe, if you're going to make 50 episodes, the universe needs to be expanded. Whereas with this sequel trilogy, they're contracting the universe because they're having it all take place within the... All right, Solo, Rogue One. How many stories can you tell that take place within the first 6 episodes? And why limit it to that? This is not this can't be done 50 times. There was no thought. There wasn't any thought. It was just shoot them out. Just shoot them out. Go forward. You could go forward or you could go backward, but just don't be within the goddamn thing. The prequel trilogy. Oh yeah. How about have a prequel trilogy to the prequels? I mean, there's just an idea, and I just thought of it now, and it's more creative than Solo or Rogue One even. Rogue One sucked too. I'm sorry. I mean, it wasn't awful. It wasn't The Last Jedi. It was better than The Last Jedi. Anything's better than The Last Jedi. I mean, yeah, sure, throwing shit at the wall is more interesting than watching paint dry. But at the end of the day, if you just watch paint dry, at least there isn't a mess afterwards. And then there's the fact that Disney didn't know who their market was. Shouldn't you? Okay, so are you doing this for the fans? Or are you doing this to make new fans, like the old fans? Or do you want new fans? Why not satisfy both? They didn't know. And they should have known. Where were their market? Where was their... Don't they have a person that handles that? Like, I don't know, does polls? Take a day. Take one day to figure out who your market is. And my last thing is, how could you think that Finn or Poe could recapture the magic that was Harrison Ford in that role? I mean, this is like one of the best roles of all time. You're just gonna... Carrie Fisher, I don't think Leia was the greatest thing ever, but she still did a good job, and she had the chemistry. But, I mean, Finn and Rey are particularly troubling. Finn is especially bad because he's a wimp. They made him a wimp. They made him a janitor. Poe has some chemistry because, what's his name? Oscar Isaac. He's pretty good. But still, they gave him nothing to do. They just made him a ace star pilot, and that was about the extent of his character. You can't really say anything about him. And he's barely in episode 7. He really doesn't do anything. And in episode 8, he just whines a lot. So, anyways, those are my thoughts about the beautiful sequel trilogy. Subscribe or don't subscribe. Like it if you don't like it. And goodbye.